Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani and Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani and Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm story expert and big bad who's back, Lani Diane Rich.
And I'm film scholar and werewolf groupie, Noelle LaCroix. And we're here today to talk about Wild at Heart, the 6th episode of Season 4.
Wild at Heart aired on November 9th, 1999. It was written by Marty Noxon and directed by David Grossman.
As you all know, and we all know at this point, this is a fully spoiled Buffy podcast. So if you haven't seen the whole thing and you're spoiler sensitive, maybe get yourself caught up and then come on back. We will be here. Grab your Kleenex and your chocolate anything, and let's go on patrol. In Wild at Heart, Buffy slays a campus vamp while up above Spike watches an evil monologues. But in the middle of his evil monologue, a bunch of commandos tase him and take him away. Later, everyone gets together at the Bronze, even Giles, who is trying some new things. But when Veruca's band plays, Oz becomes mesmerized, and it's uncomfortable. The next morning, Oz and Willow wake up with no time for morning sex, but as they compare their schedules, they discover a conflict.
There's this Wicca group on campus I wanted to check out. They have orientation on the 3-nature Wolfie. And it's probably totally silly, but...
We'll go. Show them how it's done.
Are you sure? You can lock yourself up? It's only this 1 month after orientation. They meet on different nights.
I'll be fine.
At school, Professor Walsh compliments Buffy's paper and wants her to lead a discussion, directing her to talk to the TA. You know, Riley. On campus, Oz bumps into Veruca and sits at her table, and Willow shows up and sits down, but things get awkward, so both Oz and Veruca just get up and leave her there, and what the actual fuck? Buffy finds her, and Willow finally expresses what she's been worried about.
He thinks she's sexy. He gets this blushy thing going on behind his ears. It's from me only.
Oz locks himself into the flimsiest underground cage ever built, and breaks out with what is essentially a dirty look. Outside on the street, Maggie Walsh is walking home when she's attacked by werewolf Oz. She runs, turns a corner, and there's another werewolf, who obviously uses conditioner. They go at each other, and Maggie runs off. The next morning, Oz wakes up, naked in the woods, with Veruca curled up beside him. They steal clothes from a dorm laundry room, and Veruca tries to convince Oz that there are other ways to exist as a werewolf.
I can help you, Oz. You're scared. I was too. But then I accepted it, the animal. It's powerful. Inside me all the time. Soon you just start to feel sorry for everybody else.
Professor Walsh is telling Riley about the wild dogs that attacked her the night before when Buffy comes up on them, and her Buffy sense goes off. Wild dogs? Last night was a moony night? Not good. She goes to see a scruffy sweater Giles, who is clearly teetering on the edge of a midlife crisis, and he sends her to talk to Oz. Meanwhile, Willow visits Xander in his basement to get some advice on Veruca and Oz from a man's perspective.
Have you asked Oz about it?
Well, I thought about it, but then I'll think I'm all jealous and worried.
But you are, and odds are he feels it. I'll bet that's all there is to the weird you're feeling. You guys should talk things out, Will. You both feel better.
Buffy finds Oz repairing his cage, and I don't know, Oz, considering how easily that door came off last time, maybe it's time to hire a professional? Buffy tells him about Professor Walsh being chased by 2 wild dogs. He fails to tell her about Veruca. She asks if he's okay, and he lies and says he's fine. At sunset, Oz calls Veruca to his cage and warns her about Buffy patrolling that night. He pulls her into the cage and kisses her, locking the door behind them. They have sex while turning into werewolves, and the next morning, Willow shows up with breakfast to find Veruca and Oz cuddling naked together in the cage.
She's like me, a wolf.
Well, I knew you two had a lot in common, but...
Don't touch me!
Willow confronts Oz and he throws Xander back in her face, and Willow runs off. She wanders through town and accidentally walks in front of a car. Riley pulls her out of the road and Buffy runs to her, taking her home. Willow tells Buffy about Veruca, and Buffy decides she has to go and find Veruca before the sun sets. Before leaving, she tells Willow to put the blame where it belongs, and when she's gone, Willow goes to her handy box of magic and opens it. At Oz's, Buffy shows up and is not impressed.
Where is she?
I don't know. I already checked all the usual haunts. But I know the areas we're drawn to. I'm pretty sure I can follow our scent.
We'll try that then.
Look, Buffy, you should know that...
Oz. Now might be a good time for your trademark stoicism.
Willow starts on a magic spell of vengeance while Buffy and Oz go on the hunt for Veruca. They find Veruca's clothing and attempt to throw them off her trail. They figure out that Veruca will be after Willow and run off to find her, but are delayed when they bump into some commandos in the woods. In the chemistry lab, Willow is about to cast a spell on Oz and Veruca, but she stops herself. At that moment, Veruca walks in and says that sometimes you have to kill in order to keep what's yours.
How about that? The sun's almost down.
Veruca attacks Willow, and Oz walks in to stop her. They both start to change, and Oz attacks Veruca. Once they're in full wolf mode, Oz bites out her throat and turns to Willow, about to attack, when Buffy shows up and pulls him back. She shoots him with the tranq gun. Later, at Giles's, Buffy explains what happened and tells him about the commandos and worries about Oz and Willow. Willow shows up at Oz's apartment to find him packing. He's leaving so he can figure out his wolf side in a place where he can't hurt anyone, least of all, Willow.
Oz, don't you love me?
My whole life. I've never loved anything else.
All right, Noelle. Now, we have a lot to talk about in this episode for Wild at Heart, and I know that you are up in your feelings, and I'm going to let you get to that. But first, we have to talk about the most important thing that happens in this episode, which is 15 seconds of Spike.
And now for your moment of Spike.
Now for your moment of Spike.
I completely forgot that Spike was in this episode. And then I was like, wait, is
It has
Spike in
nothing
this
to
episode?
do.
Oh, no, he's not. No, not really.
It has nothing to do with anybody. It's like the opposite of a coda. You know, it's the
Yes.
opening version of a coda. There's nothing. It's just like the beginning of what's going to be happening from here on out. But it is the beginning of Spike's amazing arc, which I absolutely love. This, of course, is the moment when the commandos take him. They're going to put a chip in his head and he's not going to be able to hurt people anymore. And it just is the most wonderful thing. And I love it with my whole heart. So I'm very excited about that. I also, you know, of course, have a soft spot for Spike evil monologuing from the top of a building. You know, that's always fun. And it's
Like you
incredibly
do.
convenient. Exactly, like you do. It's incredibly convenient that the action always happens next to the building where he is, because it's not like the Sunnydale campus has a lot of building. He'd have to like crawl down and then walk and then go to another building top. It's really inconvenient. It's not like in LA when he's, you know, evil monologuing from a building over Angel. So it's wonderful. I loved it. It was fun. It was very, very brief. But man, I love me some Spike.
Yeah, a little Spike amuse-bouche is really what this episode needs.
Boosh.
Well,
It's
was your
pretty
bouche
wonderful.
amused? Mine was.
My boosh absolutely was. Why, thank you.
Oh, man.
Wow, that sounds dirty. All right.
This is what we call stalling, because this is like a big episode where stuff happens and
This
I'm going to
is.
cry because
Oh.
it's just intense.
I'm
It's so
sorry.
intense.
I'm
It's-
sorry. Well, why
no.
don't we go ahead and get the intensity out of the way at the beginning? Tell me about how this episode affected you as a human being.
So when I watch this episode, I feel that my feelings are being felt.
Okay.
No, but there is this real thread running through this episode of the feeling of deep connection that happens when we are truly seen or known or part of a group. And it starts off funny and kind of sweet, and then it ramps up in seriousness as we go along until, you know, we're left with Willow sobbing as Oz drives away. And I can't. So, you know, the opening, in the opening, before we get Spike, we get Buffy is back.
Yes.
Right? We've had this, like, you know, previously on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I'm Parker Abrams, you know, and it's like, I'm so glad that we're done with that previously on, because, oh my God, no. So we're back to Buffy, you know, quipping and, you know, generally being a badass and, you know, kicking ass. But she says, you know, she's cracking jokes and she says, that's all I get? I don't think the forces of darkness are even trying, which is kind of a great jumping off point for this whole, like, you know, I'm working, so like work with me here.
I'm working here, doing the thing, right?
Yeah, and then, you know, we have another wonderful moment of humor with Giles at the Bronze, and he's trying to fit into this group, and not really, like, everyone is weirded out. Like, why is Giles here? What's happening? And of course, Oz is the one who comes through and says, I've seen Giles's collection. He was an animal in his day, which is, you know, of course, a nice animal link, because we're going to be talking about that and the animal inside and your wildness being like an animal, and then Veruca's on stage and whatever. It's fine.
Right.
It's fine. But, you know, here's Giles, like, trying to fit in with this group of students and, like, be part of the gang. Even though he is, but it's not, you know, he needs that connection. He's trying so hard. He's going to buy them lattes. Like, it's very sweet. It's very
so
sweet.
But he went there, though. He was surprised to see them. Like, he went to the Bronze. Giles is in this. Okay, we're going to talk about all the things that you, like, deeply identify with. Giles in this midlife place where he's not really sure what's him, and he's trying on all the hats and trying to figure out what works for him, and not all of it does. I identify deeply with that experience right now. So watching Giles go in there, and he wasn't there to go see them. Like, they were there, and he was like, oh, hello, you know, and hanging out with them, and he was fine.
Oh, see,
but
think
he was
that's
at the
cover.
Bronze. Oh,
I think
okay,
he's
all right.
fronting. I think he's pretending that he's there to see the band.
Oh.
And, oh, yes, hello. You know, here we are. You know, all just...
What a surprise.
What a surprise. Fancy meeting you here. That's the vibe that I get from Giles. That
right.
He what he really wants is to, like, go hang out with the kids because he misses them. Like, he's so excited whenever Buffy comes over to his house. Like,
no, that's true. But he's excited because he's looking for work and something to see. I read Giles completely differently. I read him as hanging out with them because that's all he's got. Because I don't know, like, I'm a teacher. I work with young kids all the time. They are lovely. I adore them. They're very sweet. I don't want to hang out with them. You want to hang out with people who have, like, some shared experience. And I guess they do have shared experience, you know, fighting ultimate evil and whatever. But at the same time, I don't know. I read it completely differently, that here he is just trying things. I'll go to the Bronze. I'll see what's going on, you know, enjoy some music, which is his thing. And then he turns around and who's there? The only friends he have, which are half his age. Oh, God. But he's polite because he's British, so he sits down.
Oh, man.
We get such different reads off this episode. It's going to be so fun.
It's going to be so fun. It's going to be so fun. So, of course, you know, Oz and Giles and Xander are all completely entranced by Veruca. Ugh. And we're supposed to know, you know, because she dresses like Faith, this is the sexy girl.
And she does this weird primal thing with her head where she hunches over and looks into the... I'm sure she was directed to do that, but oh my God, it looks so incredibly affected and calls so much attention to itself.
Yeah, it doesn't look like natural movement at all. None of her movement does. It's really unfortunate. It's really, really unfortunate. But of course, you know, we go from, like, this, like, you see Willow seeing Oz see Veruca, and it's uncomfortable. And then we go to Oz and Willow in bed together.
Oh
and
my
it's the
God.
sweetest.
It is the sweetest. And I have to say, that moment where Oz says, "Come back to me," and you see him kind of reaching down under the covers, that is an unbelievably sexy moment.
Waking her up a little bit because she's dreaming.
A little bit. It's kind of sweet.
But we see, I mean, in this episode that's really about connection and belonging, we see, he says it's a dream, and she's talking in her sleep. And then she says she's awake, but she says, "All Geminis to the raspberry hats."
Oh.
And he says, "Now you're faking," because he knows. And she says, "Am not." Which is
It's so
such a
cute.
It's such a cute exchange of sweetness and familiarity, and how well they work together in this playful way. It's really, really wonderful. And then they're talking about their plans for the evening and how they're going to shut up Willow's brain by having sex, except, not, because it's the night before the full moon. And she says, she mentions that she's got this Wicca group orientation to go to, and Oz says, "Show him how it's done." And it's so sweet. Like, after his concern about her practicing magic, he's like, he knows that she's extraordinary and powerful, and he's like, "Yeah, not a problem, like, go go get him, Tiger." Like, he is very, like, he knows that this is something that's important to her, and that that deserves to be recognized, in equal parts with his wolfiness, which is still not something that they're really super comfortable talking about.
Right.
So we get that little bit of friction. And then in terms of, this theme of, like, being seen and known, Professor Walsh has seen that Buffy is academically pretty badass.
Yeah, I love that.
Which is fantastic. Especially because, up to this point we've had, mean old Professor Walsh who, like, doesn't care that you have any sort of emergency of any kind, because here you are standing in front of me, and, don't you dare miss my class or I'll...
But fair enough, she'll recognize when work is good. But at the same time, Buffy's like, "Okay, what do I do?" And she's like, "Talk to the TA, not my fucking job,"
Exactly. Like, and I'm done here.
Yes,
Let's go talk to the TA.
I've had my moment of kindness for the week. Let's just finish this off. Yeah.
It's like, you get one moment, Summers. That's all you get.
You get one human moment. That's it. Yeah.
Yes. But then we get the bond between Willow and Buffy being both shaky, but also, like, then sort of re-cemented because Willow is jealous of Buffy.
Yes. But I love, too, she has that moment of jealousy, and then she's so proud of Buffy because Buffy made her academically jealous. I love the way that Willow makes this into seeing Buffy. It makes it about Buffy. It is such a loving exchange. I absolutely adore it.
But of course, it also sets up this theme of jealousy and the idea of someone else kind of not stepping in, but, like, Willow's thing is being academically amazing. That is her thing. School is her thing. So here's someone else being better at her thing than she is. And we go right from here to Oz and Veruca at the lunch table outdoors, and you hate this scene so much.
Oh, I have such really difficult feelings about the scene, but you know what? We can save that for later, because you're talking about really deep themes of being seen. And I'm going to go into a furious rant. So we'll just push that down the road a little bit and let you have your space here, because I think your space is going to be much, much more valuable. Yes.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. But Oz notices, Veruca says something snippy to him because that's her entire purpose in the narrative, is to
because
snip
she's
at
terrible.
everyone. Because I mean, because she's a werewolf, so she's a female dog, so she's literally bitchy. I don't know. It's like, whatever. It's not a word I like to use, but whatever. She's the bitchy mean girl. Like, she just is. There's really not a way around it. But Oz notices Veruca's appetite, which is not symbolic at all. And we've paired this idea of hungry and horny before with another girl who likes the pleather pants. So I don't know, like the commenting on someone's food is always kind of a shifty place, but I like that what he's noting about her is her appetite. Now, what she comes back with, we'll get to later, but he's noticing this thing about her that is something that she likes about herself. She likes that she enjoys eating. And there's that little bit, I mean, it's not great, but there's that bit of connection and being seen in that moment. And then, of course, Veruca turns it on its ear when she looks at Willow and says, "Good shirt." Oh, which, God. I love that line reading. I love it. It makes me so happy and so angry because it's like, it's so pointed. She's looking directly at, she sees Willow and all of her willowness and just rips it down. And Willow, of course, Willow's pride and her willowness goes right down the drain. She says to Buffy, "Why didn't you tell me I look like a crazy birthday cake in this shirt?" Poor Willow.
That's very sweet. And I love Buffy's response, too. Yeah. I thought that was the point, which of course it was.
Yeah, it was the point.
That's Willow's style.
That's why she chose that shirt. But we're all the way back to Welcome to the Hellmouth with Cordelia, tearing Willow down for her clothes as though her appearance is what's most noteworthy about her. So... And obviously,
well, it's also an easy thing, though. Appearance is a very easy thing. If you want to take a woman down, say something shitty about her appearance.
Absolutely.
Because we are primed. The culture has primed us to be insecure about that. And even the most secure woman is probably going to feel a little something. She may be able to battle it off and be like, "Fuck you." But, it is the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it is this, like, for Willow in particular, the appearance, I don't know, her appearance seems to be, I mean, in this episode, it's a sore spot, but it's something that comes up for Willow over and over and over again, in Halloween, wanting to be, a ghost because she's covered in this, Buffy wants her to present herself in a particular way, or at least take the opportunity to explore presenting herself in a particular way. And Willow is not comfortable with that. No ma'am.
And Halloween, because that's when Oz is driving the van and he sees her, and who is that girl? All right. Sorry. It just brought me down memory lane, and I'm so sad.
And you're so sad. Yeah, it's real sad. It's very, very sad. And of course, Oz and Veruca in the woods with the spooning, because the Sunnydale forest. I mean, we've been in the forest before, but what? What? Anyway, but I love the shot so much. From the blue morning sky down through the trees to Oz on the ground, and at first you can't really see that there's anyone else there, and then lo and behold, Veruca's behind him, and it's so pretty. It's so pretty. And they're all like cuddly outside, and naked in nature is my aesthetic in a big way. So I have a lot to like. I have a lot of feelings about this moment. Right. Obviously, it's a huge turning point. And it's not. I mean, and it's not so much like Garden of Eden as it is like Forest of Carnality,
right?
But here we have this woman tempting a good man away from what is capital R Rosenberg right.
Right.
And we even have a link between Oz and godliness with his Halloween costume from a few weeks ago, where he literally went as God
right.
for Halloween. And part of that was in his connection to Willow. Like, it wasn't, it's a snarky costume on its own.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and it's perfectly Oz, but also it was about that relationship with Willow, who of course was dressed as Joan of Arc, which I love so much.
Right.
And then, but we do, I mean, it is kind of biblical. I mean, once Oz realizes what he's done, he gets dressed. Like Adam eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge and realizing he's naked and covering himself.
Right.
So we're doing some like a big
Wow, you're bringing some deep themes
biblical.
into this. I like
well,
it.
I mean,
yeah.
you can't not though, because it is about knowledge and like it's literally about knowledge and
Yeah.
ultimately about, oh gosh, like identity and who you are and whether you want to be connected to what the show presents as something higher, which we've equated with Willow up to this point, because Willow's pretty great. She's also a witch, which means she has a direct line of communication to spirit. So arguably, she is the most divine of our core cast. And in this episode, we've really pitted her against Veruca, who's like, it's the wolf, it's the animal, this is who you are, you're the wolf all the time. And that's her approach to this piece of identity that Oz hasn't really confronted up till this point. And I mean, and I think we see, there are some visual cues about Oz's mental emotional connection to the idea of being a werewolf that I will get to in a minute. But I don't okay, the dorm laundry room scene is a really interesting scene. I do not like the sexy animalistic woman as the temptress of a good man. That's a trope we see everywhere all the time. I don't like it, but I do appreciate the very real possibility that Oz has desires that Willow isn't fulfilling, and that he's not yet acknowledging to himself because he doesn't really have anyone to acknowledge it with.
Well, I mean, I think that it's that, like, when you're talking about being seen, you know, that, like, Willow knows human Oz, but Willow can never really know werewolf Oz. She doesn't know what that's like. She doesn't know the experience. And so having somebody who understands and gets you is really, I mean, that's a huge balm to your soul, you know, and when you're seen in a way that you haven't been able to be seen, I think that makes you feel like super, super connected with the person who can see you, whether or not they're actually like a decent person that you would ever like in any other context, you know, Veruca, but because she's the worst. So yeah, I completely understand that, and I actually kind of like that sense of that call, you know, to somebody else who can understand your experience in a way that, like, other people who you love and connect with in other ways maybe can't.
Yeah, and we talk about this. I mean, I've talked about this before when I talk about the queerness of monsters and slayers, for that matter. You know, that if you have an experience that is outside of the norm, whatever that means, whatever that norm is, it's so crucial to have people who have also had that experience. You know, I'm flashing back to Buffy telling Willow that she can't understand the power that she feels as a slayer. You know, Willow is feeling some jealousy because Buffy and Faith are hanging out. And, you know, Willow tries to, you know, she makes that bid for connection with Buffy about, oh yeah, like, I know how it feels to have power. And Buffy's like, I don't think you can really understand. And we have that again. Right.
We played that whole thing out last season with Faith. You know, it's kind of the same kind of themes. Like, somebody who can understand what your experience is an incredibly powerful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Oz at the end, like the best he can do for an excuse for his behavior when, Willow confronts him, he says, I didn't have a choice. And she says, but you did. You could have told somebody.
Right.
And that, for me, like, that is such a beautifully painful moment. And it raises the question, could he have told somebody? And I think that, I mean, yeah, he knew she was a werewolf. He knew, but also I think the fact that he feels that he doesn't have a choice speaks to this pull to protect someone who is like you, to want to explore that difference that Veruca is highlighting in him, because that's what she likes about him.
Right.
She's very clear about that it's this bond that they share, both being wolves, that pulls her to him.
Right.
It's this thing that he is, I mean, maybe not ashamed of, but definitely keeps secret and hidden and literally locked up. So to have someone say, hey, no, this thing that you've been locking up is actually great. There's a deeper narrative here for Oz that I think we don't really get, because we're focused on the jealousy angle, which is a huge thing, and gives us that beautiful moment of connection with Willow and Xander, where she goes to see him and she's talking to him and he just says, I've deciphered your ingenious code. Like, it's so sweet. It's so great.
So
he's
sweet.
He's like, look, let's talk about the issue, not around the issue, because I know that, this isn't your friend's cousin's, dentist that we're talking about. This is you. This is
I
you.
love Xander too as like our confessional character now. He is the one that people go to when they've got problems. I mean, last week he was a bartender, but he kind of is. He's the priest. He's the bartender. He's the guy you go to have these conversations. And this is, the Xander that I love. I think this is the ultimate expression of Xander. And his role in the group being the one that keeps them emotionally connected and humanly connected. Like, he's the only one without any kind of superpowers, any kind of supernatural nothing, right? So he's the one who keeps them all connected to their humanity, to what all of this means for them as people, as opposed to as supernatural, crime fighters or whatever. And I love that we have this role for Xander. I think that he fills it really well. And I love the way that he gives, such sweet advice. It's really a fun version of Xander. I like that guy.
I love him saying, talk to Oz. Like, obviously, like, he's probably sensing that you're worried. Go talk to him. And Willow says, well, then he'll know. Then he might think I'm worried and jealous. And Xander says, but you are.
But you are.
I see what's going on here. It's wonderful. I love the version of Xander who is giving like really good love and support to his friends. This is good Xander. I'm pro this.
This is really good Xander. This is my favorite flavor of Xander. I enjoy this very much. There are a lot of things in season 4 that we like to complain about, right? Because season 4 is one of these seasons that everybody's like, season 4. And I think that it's again like that phenomenon where you look at the big bad, you look at the big story for the whole season and you think, ugh, because the whole Maggie Walsh, Adam thing, whatever, it's all kind of bullshit. And it's all bad. And when we get to Riley and the initiative, whatever. But there's some great stuff happening in season 4. I mean, we've got this wonderful expression of Xander, right? This kind of rediscovery of Xander at a point in his life where he is sort of kind of sinking like a stone. Like, I mean, he's literally living in the basement. Like, he's at the bottom. He's at rock bottom literally every day, living in the basement, not working toward a future of any kind, like hopping back and forth between these random jobs, trying to just make a little money so he can pay rent to his mom as soon as she puts a lock on his door. All of this stuff is is really fun, and it gives us some great Xander. We've got some great sweater Giles. I love scruffy sweater Giles. He's grown a bit of a scruff. He's not shaving quite as much as he was. He's wearing sweaters instead of tweed and button down everything. And so I love that expression of like midlife crisis Giles that we're going to be seeing escalating throughout the season. Of course, we get the beginning of the most wonderful arc in all of television history, which is the Spike arc. There's a lot of great stuff happening in season 4 that you can really appreciate.
Absolutely. Do we want to talk about jealousy?
Yes, let's.
The always such a fun and crunchy.
Yeah.
Always such a crunchy theme, jealousy.
Yes.
So we get some really interesting and slightly problematic takes on jealousy in this episode. Buffy saying, who cares who Oz checks out if he loves Willow? And yeah, I mean, that's great. Like, that's really good. Right. That's excellent. A+ friending right there, Buffy. Except that this isn't about love. It's about desire.
Right.
And that gets really, really complicated really fast because the weight Willow puts on the word sexy when she says he thinks she's sexy is so significant. It's like, this is the thing that Willow feels she doesn't have.
Right.
And you can see that the attraction, she describes the blushing behind his ears, which is really cute.
Right. Yes.
But, she equates, she says, that's for me only. But there's this, I don't know how to express this. There's this weight that she puts on the idea that Veruca is sexy and she's not.
Right.
And she says, I have wrong feelings about other guys sometimes, but I feel guilty. I flog and punish. And I'm like, well, like, are they wrong feelings?
Are they wrong feelings? No. Being attracted to somebody. I mean, this is the thing. Like, there are things you can control and things you can't. You can't control how you feel or how you respond. You can control what you choose and what action you take. But, like, the kind of, like, you see somebody who's attractive and you're attracted to them. That's just you being a human person. It's like looking in the sun and sneezing. Should you flog yourself for that? Not really. No, because it's just the way it is. The action that you take, absolutely you're responsible for that, and if you betray somebody that you've made a promise to, then that's a bad thing, but having a thought, finding somebody attractive, that is not a betrayal.
Yeah. And that is always where I bounce really hard off the jealousy narrative.
Yeah.
That we're gonna, we're gonna find somebody else attractive, and then that's gonna mean that we're gonna undo everything that we've built up in our relationship so far. But I like Buffy trying really hard to make this like, okay, this is going to blow over in a couple days. It's going to be like Veruca who. And she says Oz just isn't the type to stray. And I really like the choice of the word stray there. It's like really,
that
really
was
good.
Very deliberately chosen.
Really good, really good writing there. But part of what makes this story painful is that it's the love desire conflict. Oz undoubtedly loves Willow, and I think ultimately that's why he leaves. But Veruca really does have something that Willow doesn't, and it's that connection to werewolfness that we're painting as sexy. I don't know that we needed to do that, but I mean,
right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we make it about the sexiness, but it's really about that werewolfness. That's what is appealing about her.
Yeah, but part of that is that sort of animalistic side, and there is sort of an animalistic thing to that sexy, that whole sex thing, there is an animalistic element to it. So I think that like the way that we are choosing to frame her animalism, in this context of it's sexy. But it is more than that.
Yeah, I mean, and I like that Oz does clarify. Willow says, you had feelings for her, didn't you? And he says, no, I could sense something, and he trails off. And Willow says, but you wanted her, like in an animal way. And then she says the line that stabs me through the heart. She says, like more than you wanted me.
Right.
And Oz
God.
says nothing. And I just die because it's so painful. So painful to not be,
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And,
And yeah, that's also like a real experience that a lot of people have had. And when someone makes a choice, someone in your life makes a choice, and that choice is not you, it's really hard not to take it personally and not, like it's not personal and yet it is totally personal.
Oh, yeah.
It's so rough. It's so rough, but so real. Like I feel for everybody in this scenario. I feel for everyone.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's hard.
It's really tough. It's really tough.
And we're gonna need a bigger cage. I mean,
we're gonna need a better assembled cage. I think maybe a higher quality cage.
Yeah, I don't know. College werewolf Oz's cage is underground in the cemetery.
Yep.
Which is fantastic symbolically.
Yes.
And really speaks to Oz's relationship to his animal side. This is what I was alluding to earlier. He literally goes underground. I mean, into the underworld, surrounded by death, to change into his animal form. Like, this is not subtle.
Right. And also, like, burying his true nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, is he burying? And then it makes me wonder, like, is this symbolic of Oz burying his desire for this passionate animalistic connection that he, experiences with Veruca, that he needs, that this real need that he has to be allowed to have the full experience of his animal form? Is he burying his violence? Because that's the other thing about the werewolves. They're violent. They are vicious.
Right.
And Oz is Mr. Chill. He's Mr. Cool. He's Mr. No problem. Cool in a crisis guy. This is, I think, when he yells at Veruca in this episode, it's not the only time that we see him raise his voice at all. In the whole, I'm racking my brain and I can't.
I don't think so. Like, I'm trying. The only thing, like, when Willow is in danger, he gets tense.
He gets tense, right? Like the little muscles in his face.
Right. Like, even when he comes in and he sees Willow and Xander kissing in Lover's Walk, like, he very calmly is like, come on, Cordelia, let's leave. When they're looking for Willow, when he realizes that Willow's in danger and they're looking for her, you can see that he's tense, But yeah, like, I don't think he's ever... Yeah. He's ever lost it at all.
He's never lost it. And he's never raised his voice.
Yeah.
This is the one time I think that Oz raises his voice. And it's to tell Veruca to get out, which is really something. But I also love the detail that, of course, we're buried underground. We're at the cemetery. And this is where Oz and Willow's relationship dies.
Oh, I know. It's so sad.
Death to the relationship. And it's...
it is.
I need a moment, Lani.
All right. Well, let's take that moment to hear from the Watchers Council and our sponsor for this week. This episode of Still Pretty is brought to you by FlimsyCages.com. FlimsyCages.com is here to provide all your needs for a very pretty underground cage that can be knocked over by one powerful werewolf sneeze. FlimsyCages.com, when you want to pretend you did everything you could to keep the dangerous shapeshifter inside locked up, but really? Meh. Go to FlimsyCages.com and use the code VerucaSucks to get your discount today. Disclaimer, the discount code will look like it works, but it won't. Also, it's probably important to let you know that the Watchers Council uses rather more sturdy incarceration technology. Isn't that right, Clive? Or instead, you could choose to take the $3 you might spend on a substandard retention device and give it directly to Chipperish Media so that we can keep making the great podcasts you love. Like Still Dead about Angel the series, Listen Up A-Holes about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Orgasm about explosive inspiration, our Star Wars podcast, Metaphors Be With You, and of course, How Story Works, a free college-level course in narrative theory which will teach you that an antagonist doesn't give up until the conflict is finally resolved. So if it hasn't been decided with a clear winner yet, you can bet it ain't over. Visit patreon.com/chipperish to find out more. Thank you, Watchers Council, for that informative ad. Now, Noelle, I guess it's a time in the podcast where we got to talk about frickin' Veruca.
Wait a minute. We're not going to talk about that whole thing with Bryony?
What?
The Patreon ask. She's clearly got Clive locked up in a cage. I mean, you heard that, right?
Noelle, they're just actors. It's just like a bit thing that they're doing. I mean, they take it farther than like most actors probably would, but it's really not a thing.
Clive stayed at your house for like a month.
Right, and then he disappeared.
And now he's being kept in a cage.
Maybe. I don't know. Sounds like a Clive problem to me.
Wow. Good for you, not taking responsibility for the problems of the men you've slept with. I like it.
My therapist is so good, seriously. All right, so anyway, back to Veruca. Veruca's the worst, and here is my argument for why I just hate Veruca. First of all, and this is probably not her fault, but we've got the skinny girl who eats burgers trope, which drives me insane. We sort of referenced this earlier. This is where my rant comes in. I hate that. I hate that whole thing where like, oh, look at me. I'm 45 pounds dripping wet and I can eat all the burgers I want. We do it with Fred over in Angel. We do it here. Gilmore Girls is probably one of the worst offenders on this because we have these two women who subsist almost entirely on Chinese food and pizza, and yet, you know, skinny, absolutely conforming to this unrealistic beauty standard that Hollywood has set for us. We've watched all of these women on, you know, TV and in movies for so long. And when there's a fat one, a quote unquote fat one, she's a size 6, for Christ's sake. So like that kind of stuff makes me insane. I think this is incredibly damaging to women. And then when Veruca has that moment where she's like, oh my God, I hate the chicks who say, is there dressing on that? And I'm like, oh my God, shut up. Not to mention the fact that this actress doesn't touch that burger during that entire exchange. So, you know, whatever, because she can't afford to, because she wants to, you know, work in Hollywood. So this whole thing, this like impossible space in which a woman has to be both incredibly thin and willing to eat absolutely everything in the world at the same time drives me crazy. I absolutely hate it. And the thing is that Marty Noxon, who wrote this episode, has publicly talked about her struggles with eating disorders, and she is not at fault for this. This is about the culture that poisoned her in the first place and poisons all of us, and I hate that shit. It drives me crazy.
And meanwhile, I'm over here, like, with my eating disordered history, like, yeah, she just, you know, likes to eat because she's a werewolf.
And you know what? Fair enough. She is a werewolf. I guess that burns a lot of calories. So for Veruca specifically, possibly this may not be an issue, but it is an issue in general with the way that women are presented and the way that women are told that you have to, you know, fulfill all of these absolutely impossible things. And I think it drives me crazy. But here's the other thing. Like, I hate Veruca for a lot of reasons, and we're going to hit them all. But Willow sits down and Veruca doesn't even acknowledge her. She doesn't say hi. She doesn't even smile at her. There's nothing. And I'm like, fuck you, Veruca. That's goddamn Willow Rosenberg, bitch. Stop that nonsense. Then, okay, Oz just leaves Willow there.
Yeah, what
in this
the hell?
really awkward, uncomfortable situation. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't like that my girlfriend and the woman that I've been drooling over for a couple of weeks are here making me feel uncomfortable, so let me leave. And then leaves his coffee cup behind. Like, this is a student union. Nobody is cleaning up after you. You bust your own damn table, Oz. You just leave your coffee cup there for what? For Willow to pick up after you? And then Veruca is just like, nah, I gotta go. Leaves her there. Leaves all of her food there, also on the table for Willow to pick up. And then throws that, oh, good shirt line at her, which is bitchy as hell. The whole thing drives me crazy. But I mean, like, part of it is that they don't clean up after themselves. Like, that annoys me almost as much as everything else.
Well, Oz just leaving. Like, that is... I lose it.
That is so shitty.
I lose it.
Yes.
It's like, oh, shit, I'm uncomfortable. I'm going to go.
Right.
Never mind.
Right.
Like, everyone in this situation is uncomfortable, Oz. Like, it's not all about you. It's not all about you.
Exactly. And leave Willow there
Yes.
to deal with Veruca? Like, no, you don't. You say, hey, Willow, why don't we leave? Because this woman's clearly a bitch, or something, right? But he just leaves her there, and it's terrible. And then you've got Veruca, who generally just has a shocking lack of concern for the well-being, welfare of anyone aside from her. Not just Willow, but the people she might maim or kill while she's out being a werewolf, during the full moon. And the thing is, like, also her incredible carelessness toward Oz and her lack of concern for the fact that Oz is in a relationship. Because the thing is, it is not the job of the other person in a cheating scenario to protect the relationship. Like, that's Oz's fucking job. So I don't hold Veruca responsible for that. And hating on the other person when someone cheats, like, especially in this, we have this kind of construction, this hetero construction where there are two women involved, is an incredibly misogynistic trope. And you know what? I'm done with that. But Veruca doesn't care about anyone. I mean, forget Oz and Willow. Forget the fact that if she's so into Oz, like if she cared about Oz at all, the fact that he is in a relationship, that he's struggling with his identity as a werewolf, forcing all this stuff on him, like she is not good for him. She is going after what she wants, and fuck him. She doesn't care, So she's terrible for that. But she doesn't care about anybody. I find it really terrible, and I appreciate your sympathy for her.
Oh yes,
because I do find your sympathy like interesting, but I think any vulnerability in this character has to be actively decoded by and within the viewer, because it's not on the screen, it's not in the text. She's written and performed flatly with absolutely no nuance or complexity. She bores the fuck out of me when she's not annoying me. So I don't know. Anyway, you go into your Veruca thing. You go ahead and give your opposite side of this.
Well, and to be fair, this is all completely, like, I think I have written all of this subtext for Veruca that is absolutely not there, because I, too, am so sick of the trope of the sexy girl who comes along and steals your man. Like, it's like,
right.
Ew, no.
Yeah.
So, I mean, some of this is headcanon. Some of this is that stretch to vulnerability that you mentioned.
Right.
But I actually do feel for Veruca in this story. And I know, unpopular opinion, and please use the hashtag still pretty when you tell me on social media how wrong I am about this.
Oh, when you have an unpopular opinion, all the people who agree with you are get so excited. Those are the people you're going to hear from.
But, like, hashtag still pretty. Because you know that everyone else who follows that hashtag also wants to see you tell me that I'm super duper wrong. Like that. See, I'm a giver. I'm thinking of the community. It's the community building hatred of Noelle's unpopular opinion. So, but here's the thing about Veruca. I think we do get a teeny tiny bit of vulnerability from her, but it's couched in this whole like, I'm turning into an animal. It's not, I don't like it. But she is exploring the edges of her power a lot like Willow is with magic. She is, she's the mean girl with the superiority complex, but she also wants connection and to be seen and loved for who she truly is. She says to Oz, in a performance that I did not think needed to be quite so over the top, but whatever. I've wanted you even before I ever saw you. I sensed you. Did you sense me? And that's where we get a teeny tiny little bit of vulnerability. There's a desperation there that I think is not just about the physical transformation that's about to happen.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't see any desperation. She knows goddamn well he sensed her. I don't see any insecurity in her at all in that moment. See, I like that you see it. I like that you see that.
I see a little bit of desperation because she needs what she wants, what she's asking for him to do is say yes. To confirm that there is this connection between them. And of course, we don't hear an answer because Oz replies by grabbing her and kissing her, and he's a man of action. But, his lack of answer is an answer.
Yeah. Right.
And also, speaks to, or doesn't speak to, I don't know, speaks to Oz not being able to say, yes, I am a werewolf. And I'm hitting the queer storyline pretty hard here, because the first time Oz was a werewolf was in Phases, where we get the bait and switch with Larry, who we think is the werewolf, but oh no, Larry's gay. So we've made this connection with Werewolf Oz and the idea of an alternative sexuality, a queer sexuality, if you will. And that's clearly some of what's going on in this relationship with Oz and Veruca. I mean, it's not much of a relationship because they can't talk about it. But
connection? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I see that. I see that need to be acknowledged for what you are and loved for being a literal monster. It's an interesting problem. And she's saying, I mean, she's trying to reclaim her monsterness. She's trying to say, no, this is a good thing. And then she hits the I'm the villain because, it makes us better. You feel sorry for other people. And when someone says, you don't understand, but you will, that's antagonist, red flag. Hello,
Oh, absolutely. Are you dating an antagonist? Here are the red flags to look for.
I need that BuzzFeed list. 10 signs you may be dating the antagonist.
You may be dating an antagonst. Oh, yeah, we're going to have to write
Care
that
only
up.
about their
Anyway.
own feelings? Check. Never ask how you are? Check. Wait a minute. Hold on. I got to make some calls.
Exactly.
In conclusion, Veruca's kind of the worst. And my queer theorist heart just breaks for the lost possibility of a narrative about I'm a monster and I want to exist and the world is a monster and society won't let me. So anyway.
Right.
Headcanon.
I like that. I
Headcanon
like
is
that
a
you're
powerful
bringing that. But I like that you're bringing that queer theory into it. And I think that read on this actually makes this a much, much more interesting dynamic. I think there's much, much more interesting things going on there. And I think I'm pretty sure that they didn't see that when they were writing it, that it wasn't intentional. But I like the options there, the opportunities there for that to be a queer metaphor. And I think that it works really nicely. And I appreciate that you saw that there and brought that to this discussion because I think that it makes it better.
Also,
So
I
thank
just
you for
like
that.
antagonists.
Antagonists are so fun.
The people that we're supposed to hate, I really enjoy.
That's
just
they're so
kind
much
of
fun.
that-
They're so much
They're
fun.
so great. They're so
That's my
great.
favorite thing. It's a favorite thing to write too, because antagonist has one job, right? Block the protagonist. That's all they have. One damn job. So you can do anything with an antagonist. It's really, really fun. But anyway, that is narrative theory. You can find more about that over in the podcast How Story Works. But today we are talking about Wild at Heart on Buffy, and I want to talk a little bit about Willow because oh my God, Willow! I love Willow pretty much all the time in everything. Very rarely is there a Willow moment that I don't completely adore and feel is genuine. But this seems odd to me where we open suddenly in this relationship between Willow and Oz that has been highly communicative. And Willow is always the one that gives, whenever Buffy comes to her and is like, I don't know, it's gonna Angel. Then Willow always says, well, talk to him, right? So they've been together for a couple of years. They have a history of actually speaking to each other about the things that are going on in their relationship. It feels weird to me that suddenly Willow can't talk to Oz. Did that feel odd to you?
Yeah, it really, really does. They seem to have their communication down, or at least they do on Oz's end of things. So when Oz, I guess what it is that Oz has stopped communicating with Willow because he doesn't understand what's going on. But again, that's way under the surface. We don't get that in the text. We have to know that Oz has this thing going on that he's not talking about with Willow. Yeah. I don't like it.
Yeah, I too know the love of a taciturn man. You know, I mean, this is Willow's thing. Like, she's used to him, I think, speaking with action, and his actions right now are kind of shitty, and she's not sure, like, where to take that or what that means, but it also feels a little weird. And then there's this moment, too, where Willow, after the birthday cake shirt incident, right, and she's feeling so insecure about Oz, goes to him in this sexy leather outfit, which on the one hand, I'm like, fuck yeah, release the badass witch inside, go for it. I hate that she's choosing that outfit because she wants to be Veruca for him, or she wants to ignite that sexual desire in him, and that she feels she has to be different in order to do that.
It's so sad that she feels like she doesn't have, like, she's not sexy. That is her fear,
right,
in all of this.
And she's making it about her rather than him. And I mean, this is the thing. Like, she doesn't understand what's happening because she trusts Oz so completely that the idea that what is happening is actually what is happening is so beyond her that she can't get behind it. And this is the thing where, like, trust gets turned around on the people who hold it. You know, and that's a very difficult thing for me to watch personally.
Yeah.
I identify, you're bringing queer theory to this. I'm bringing betrayal of trust to this. And I'm like, oh, no. You know, because the thing is that, like, it's very clear exactly what's going on here. But when you trust somebody completely, those things they're not an option because you trust them. And when you trust somebody completely, that's when they have the power to betray you so totally. And I hate that, and that always bugs me. And I think that trust is a good thing. Like, you know, in a relationship, you should be able to trust each other.
Absolutely.
But when you trust somebody, that gives them a lot of power to fuck you up. And I don't like that.
Yeah. It's not good. It's not good.
It's not good.
And of course, Buffy says, you know, it's going to be fine. It's going to blow over. Mm-hmm. And Willow's still like, I don't know. I don't know about this. And then she goes
because
to
she
Xander.
knows.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, she goes to Xander. I mean, I know we talked about this a little bit, but I so love Willow going to Xander. They were best friends for so long, and the cheating thing, you know, with Cordelia and Oz from season 3, like, definitely put some space between them, you know. And it's nice to see her going to him again.
Yeah, it's nice to see them in that friend space where stuff isn't weird between them. She just needs him to weigh in on this. On the manly situation. Man things.
On the manly man things, you know.
Is,
yeah.
you know.
It's really incredibly sweet. And of course, you know, we've talked about Xander, how much I love Xander being the new, you know, town priest, the one that everybody goes to, the confessional space. It's really, really wonderful. But the thing, though, we go to where Willow finds Oz and Veruca, you know, in the underground lair space, you know. And he throws Xander in her face, and I have never wanted to punch Oz so much in my life. Punch him in his face.
I know how it feels. Ugh.
Oh,
like, fuck you! No. You do not
get. You don't get to do that, by the way, because that is over, that is done, that is forgiven, that has been resolved. So using that so that you don't have to face what you've done, fuck you, Oz. And me saying, fuck you, Oz. This is such a weird episode for me because I love Oz all the time. He's my guy, you know, and now, like, being this angry with Oz, I find a little disconcerting, quite honestly. It's throwing me a little bit off my game. But I love the way that Willow is, the way she handles it. Like, instead of jumping on him and ripping his face apart with her fingernails, which is, I think, possibly in that circumstance, something that I might have done. She just explains so nicely, you know, in such a nice and respectful way that he's full of shit and can fuck right off, you know? Yep. But she's still super vulnerable in that moment. She's still, you know, trying to process everything, and she just runs away, and it's so freaking heartbreaking. God. And then, of course, you know, Buffy says, put the blame where it belongs. And she goes immediately to her box of magic, right?
Yes.
And pulls the stuff out. And I love watching her arc through this because we're going to see Willow struggle with when you have power to do, like, whatever you want. Yep. not doing it is all like just as powerful a choice, you know? So here she is starting up this spell, you know, working on it. And then she changes her mind and she decides not to do it. And that is such an incredibly powerful choice. It's a quiet moment. And then we get Veruca coming in with her stupid, growly, animalistic bullshit. And then we got to deal with that. But like in that moment where Willow makes that choice, I love that.
It's incredible. And of course, you know, we come in on her in the science lab working her spell. And I just love science lab plus magic. It makes me so happy whenever the magic takes place in the science lab. Like it gives me heart feelings and I love it. But she's like conjuring in the name of the devil and the forces of hell. And I'm like, oh, honey, like, no, like, no.
That's going to have a splashback. Yeah.
No guy's worth it. You know, no. None of that, sugar. No man's worth it. I think is the line from Some Like It Hot. But anyway, yeah, it's great. And the supplies start to float as she gets more and more upset. And then she backs out. And it's this, oh, it's so good. It's so good. So good.
It is.
I mean, I hate heartbroken spellcasting Willow, but I love heartbroken spellcasting Willow.
Oh, I know. And Willow and Allison Hannigan can bring on that level of emotion like nobody's business. She is so amazing in this whole thing. At the end, when she says, Oz, don't you love me?
Oh, my God.
It breaks me into tiny little pieces. I can't handle it. Well, it's so powerful.
Yeah, because Despair Willow is probably the hardest Willow to stomach. I mean, it's so hard to see her just checked out and, you know, stumbling through the street. And I hate Riley saying, maybe you should take her home to Buffy. Like Buffy wouldn't have thought of that. But when he looks right at Willow and he says, whatever it is, it's not worth hurting yourself over, I start to cry. Like,
oh my God, it's so funny. I have the exact opposite reaction. When he says maybe you should take her home, that's like a nice thing about like, you know, here you go. I know she's safe with you, right? You know, and I'm not going to worry about it. When he looks at her with that the more you know kind of look on his face and says, whatever it is, it's not worth hurting yourself over. I'm like, shut up, Riley. God.
I love that we're polar opposites on those lines.
I know. It's love so funny.
I love it. I don't know. And maybe when I was at the depths of my despair, if a very, very handsome and very tall, muscular, blonde, probably not actually part of a secret commando society, but you know, who knows, guy had said, whatever it is, it's not worth hurting yourself over. I don't know, that might have helped. So, oh, Riley.
Well, we'll have to send Mark Blucas to your house.
Whoa. Lani, there's a very big difference between like fantasizing about a large man being in your house and actually having a large man show up at your house. This is a...
You know what? Fair enough. Absolutely true. Point conceded. I absolutely agree with you.
But also, hey, Mark, I love you.
But the Buffy and Willow stuff, though.
Oh my God. Buffy leaving Willow alone in their dorm room. And she's trying so hard to help and say the right thing. And she doesn't want to go, but she knows she has to go because somebody's got to stop this sexy werewolf who's out there with her sexy, you know, whatever. And she turns around and she just says to Willow, I love you. And I go, damn it, Noxon! You live to destroy my heart. Why?
I know.
It's not okay. It's not okay. It's not okay.
It is. It's such a great moment when she says that. And it's just like, I love that relationship between Buffy and Willow. It's so great, you know? And usually we have Willow being the one who comforts Buffy because Buffy's always the one in the middle of all the dramatic shit. It's nice to see Buffy being there for Willow.
But also watching Buffy be torn between wanting to stay and just stay with her. Just stay with her. And
I know, but she has to go and get Veruca because she's the only one who can stop a werewolf girl.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult choice to make.
Man. Yeah, and then of course, you know, Willow has to watch Oz kill Veruca in a fight that is blessedly short. Great choice there. I'm so glad that's over quickly. And then, oh my God, speaking of like heartbroken Willow, hard to stomach, she holds her hand out to him like you would offer a dog your hand to smell. And she says, Oz? You know, she's asking Wolf Oz to see human Willow, which is something that he can't do. Yeah. And it just gives me, they can't see each other and they can't be together. And it's so sad. And then, of course, you know, Willow has to weep in Buffy's arms, which is, oh God, a moment of shared pain gets me every time. Every time.
I know.
Oh, I mean, talk about the importance
awful.
of being seen and cared for and held and be, you know, have your people and be in community. Oh my God. It's brutal.
Right.
It's brutal. Shame on you, Marty Noxon, but I love you so much.
I know. It's nuts. All right. So I think we've gotten through most of what this episode has to offer. But Noelle, I got to ask you, what are you wearing?
Good shirt. Thank you. Thank you, Paige Moss, for hitting that moment so hard. She went so hard on that moment.
Oh, she did.
Bitchy entitled girl. I love it. I love it. We get some fantastic late 90s Delia's fashion on Buffy with the little head kerchief and the tube top. I mean, come on. Like, I don't think that's deeply meaningful or anything, but I had to call it out because it's really, really adorable. And of course, Willow's new look, her pleather pants and that roughly kind of sheer purple top is so reminiscent of like Faith and what she thinks sexy is supposed to be. But then when she goes to see Xander, we see that she's wearing black clogs and white socks. White socks with her black pleather. It's so Willow and it's so sweet. And when she sits when she sits down next to him and we see her white socks, I'm just like, oh dear, sweetheart. Like, this really is just a sexy girl costume that you tried to put on. It's not working, is it?
I know.
Oh,
I know.
man.
No, give it about, I don't know, about 2 years, Willow. I think that's going to be pretty on brand. But it's going to take a little while.
And then when I was watching, I did a ridiculous, anachronistic, and tarot-inspired reading of Willow's purple, white, gray, and black hoodie that's really more about how my weird mind functions. But again, hashtag still pretty on Twitter if you want to hear about that nonsense. But we get a lot of purples on Willow. We get her seduction blouse, of course, the top of that tie-dyed hooded pullover, and then the top she wears in the final scene with Oz, which I think bridges the style gap between overtly sexy and more covered up really, really nicely. And it's also another fantastic example of that late 90s fashion, the kind of baby doll inspired with the little ribbon at the neckline. And of course, with the V-neck, then her heart is all exposed and she's all vulnerable and raw. And she's got that, it's that like sweet baby fabric. I'm dead. I'm dead. I can't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. It's really, really nice. All right. So what's your girl power moment of the week?
When Veruca says to Willow, you don't have the teeth. And she's talking about, Willow wouldn't go through with a spell. Willow says, you don't know what I have. And I'm like, oh girl, here we go. It's going to be, I'm like, and at that moment, I'm ready for like a full-on wizard fight. I'm like, yeah, you zap that werewolf with some,
Expecto Patronum, that bullshit. Yeah.
And of course, the whole, all the Buffy holding Willow at the end. Oh man, it's so, I mean, that to me is always girl power. That like,
it is real
that
girl
love
power,
and compassion and being with somebody who is in so much pain. That's the height of girl power, or really human power.
Yes, very true. That does not need to be about being a girl. Men can also comfort each other in despair. It's completely fine. But my most like powerful girl moment, was when Willow decides not to use her power, because deciding not to use your power is huge. And that's going to be a big struggle that we're going to see in Willow as we move forward through the series. So it's a really interesting kind of character moment right now to see her do that. All right. So Noelle, what's your favorite part?
Unpopular opinion time. Oz and Veruca waking up in the woods. I'm sorry. I love werewolf sex, okay?
It's okay. Love what you love,
and
baby.
I love werewolf
You're
sex.
on chipperish.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. I love it. I think that's great. You know what's funny? I've never enjoyed shapeshifter stories in general. I don't know what it is. There's something about shapeshifters that like they're huge in like paranormal romance and all this kind of stuff, and it just never works for me. I don't know what it is.
Huh. Because it's
deceitful,
maybe? Because it's...
I think maybe.
Because it's uncertain.
I think,
You're a Gemini, though. Like, you should be all about the shape shifting.
I should be. If I hadn't grown up with like terrible people who lie about stuff all the time, having issues with honesty, I think maybe the shapeshifter wouldn't bother me so much. Possibly it's something I should take up with my therapist. Anyway, my favorite part.
Speaking of things you should take up with your therapist, what's your favorite part?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Spike, first of all, the evil monitor, the 5 seconds we get of Spike is my favorite part of this whole episode because the rest of this episode speaks to things that I don't really enjoy that much. Although it is an excellent episode, I will say. And also Sweater Giles. I just have a really bad weakness for British men. I don't know what it is. It's not good, though. It ain't good. It ain't good.
All right, that's it for today. We made it!
Yay!
To join in the discussion on Twitter, follow Lani at Lani Diane Rich and me at Noelle Aloud and use the hashtag StillPretty, especially when you tell me how wrong I am.
Or you can keep Chipperish Media going to the tune of $1 a month or more and gain access to the live chat in Discord where you can hang out with me and Noelle and all the Chipperish patrons who I'm sure are flogging and punishing themselves right now.
You can also show your support by giving Still Pretty a great review on Apple Podcasts or by telling your friends about the show or by deciphering Willow's ingenious code.
We will be back next time with The Initiative, the 7th episode of Season 4. Until then, now might be the time for your trademark stoicism.
Outside on the street, Maggie Walsh is walking home when she's attacked by Werewolf Oz. She runs, turns a corner, and there's another werewolf who obviously uses conditioner. She does. It's clear.
No, clearly.
She's
Yes.
been to the werewolf salon.
She's into self-care.
Yeah. Hashtag self-care, okay?